All right. I'm Kim Look. Welcome to our webinar at Ozone Training Academy. We have invited Al Sanchez from PolyMVA to be with us tonight. We're excited always to have him. He's such a good friend of mine. I know we've been working together for a long time. I've been using Poly for a long time. I often tell the story that a couple years ago when my daughter broke her wrist, her right wrist, right in the middle of her recruiting volleyball season, et cetera, et cetera. You were one of the first people I called. What can I do? How can I utilize it to get this healed as fast as possible? So, we were just talking before hitting record that, as providers, as people in the industry who know a lot of things, and there's always new things coming, um, some of these good things can even get pushed the back of our minds, and then it's good just to hear a refresher too. So if you're new to PolyMVA, never heard of it ever before, you saw our little caption that maybe it competes even or has a place next to Methylene Blue. Maybe you've heard me even talk about it or heard Al and I talk about it, but forgot to implement it. Maybe you've got it going in your practice and you just want to hear some of the new things that we're learning. We're excited to talk about PolyMVA tonight. So, again, I'm Kim Look. If you don't know me, I'm with Ozone Training Academy. It's evolved over 16 years working in practice, owning practices, medical tourism, oncology, Lyme disease, anti-aging. I've owned many practices, and trained with SOPMed first. We did ozone UV training with SOPMed. Then the FDA came in and made some changes, forced some changes on us. And so I became Med Masters, and then due to some, disagreements with partnerships, as I'm sure so many businesses understand and you as entrepreneurs understand. Now I'm here by myself, not by myself. I'm never by myself. I always got a team, but don't have a partner anymore. And so here we are at Ozone Training. And we still focus on ozone and UBI training, but my experience in niche is so much revolving around the IV space, and there's so many things again that you can do there, even biologics you can do IV. And it all just kind of integrates with the hormone therapy that everybody's doing now, the peptide therapy, the biologics therapy. But IV is expanding as well, and we're learning a whole lot of new things. So if you knew me at MedMasters, just keep in mind again, I'm not there. Although I was just going through, I was looking for our ozonated glycerin conversation for somebody because I just to rebuild all this stuff is just going to take me another couple years. Anyway, I wanted to share that because it was such a good interview with Toby from Promo Life. And I'm gonna invite him back on to have that follow-up conversation. If anybody's using ozonated glycerin from that, or you've learned it from other people, Al, I bet you have a lot of clients that are getting into it now. Would love to again follow up on that conversation, but it's all at MedMaster's YouTube channel and not at our Ozone Training Academy. So, um, anyway, just a couple of reminders as we get into letting Al introduce himself and talking about the subject. Is one thing new is now I'm inviting providers into Idaho. I have a practice here now. I work 2 days a week into Idaho or in Idaho Falls, southeast corner. And like last week, I had two really incredible nurse practitioners here, one from New Jersey, one from, we teased her, somewhere between Alabama, Ohio, Pittsburgh. Really incredible teaching high dose and EBU, but you get to see how we integrate it with methylene blue, how we integrate it with nutrition, how we integrate it with Procaine. We even had a patient come in and I gave him some ozone, or sorry, some IV stem cells, for lack of a better word, right this minute. And so you get to come in, you get to experience that kind of in a full circle, fully implemented nice space here. We still go to you to teach also, but then also in September, we have a neural therapy training. So Procaine IV and neural therapy training. I practice with a nurse practitioner, Christina Finnerty, and here in Idaho Falls, and she's done all this training and implemented it also. And so we're going to be teaching that IV Procaine. I also learned 15, 16 years ago a different format of neural therapy than what is being taught now. And if you've been to neurotherapy training with Suzanne Fury, good friend in Georgia, love her. Lexi Yu is also supporting that. Lexi Yu just put out a great video on Procaine, by the way, on her social media. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about it or you don't do it, but everybody who comes into my office, whether they be patients or these providers to learn, they walk out like both, well, one of these nurses walked out with like can I buy this right now from you? I've got to go home and give it to my husband right now. So it is a game changer in a lot of ways for that neurological reset, pain reset, fight or flight. And we'll get to this, Al. It's so interesting being back in practice after so many years of teaching, but I'm now back in practice for the first time post-COVID. Things are different. People are different. Um, their emotional constitution is different. Their physical constitution is different. You're seeing all these symptoms and reactivation of stuff that you didn't see before. There's so much that's different. And that's again, I'd like to follow up with Al eventually in this conversation about what he's seen. In terms of PolyMVA, and he's just like me. You're in dozens of clinics every single month and speak with, I'm sure, hundreds every single month. And so it's just been such a learning curve to be back in that. So anyway, you can come to see us in September for neural therapy. It's posted on our platform, as well as IV Procaine and 2 types of neural therapy. So the nerve plexus, Stella, the GI, there's a handful that we're going to be teaching. Plus I learned more of an acupuncture style, treating scars with Procaine, ozone, doing hair, things like that. Just really simple injections plus the IV. So if you're interested in that, let us know. All right. I'm sorry, I'll stop
Awesome.
talking.
No,
I'll stop talking.
that was a great webinar, Kim. Thanks.
Al, we try to keep this at about an hour, so we've got 55 minutes. We want to get into the nitty-gritty of it,
Okay.
be relevant for people. I know you understand a very high level of biochemistry when it comes to PolyMVA, and as we solicited that relationship or that correlation, that I like why PolyMVA or how PolyMVA versus other things. I was telling you on the phone the other day that I think of PolyMVA as kind of an advanced Myers, and you said actually if you were going to replace anything with it, it would be methylene blue. So methylene blue is all the rage. I love it. I love it. I love it. That's what I just gave to my son a few minutes ago. I take it orally, but tell us a little bit about your background. I gave a little bit of a bio, but it's not near long enough.
Oh my goodness.
Due diligence to how you got into poly.
Well, I mean, the long and short of it is my family. My dad started this after my mom passed away from cancer, and then fast forward 30 years from that, and my sister passes away from cancer. So that brings me into it just to help. I was just here to help, and here I am 25 years later. So it reorganized my life entirely to just really focus on a solution, and help my dad. That's what he wanted to do, and then I just got interested, and I love how things work and how things fit. That I have to understand it. So a lot of times, if you heard me speak, or like when we and I talk, if I can't put the pieces of the puzzle, at least maybe they don't look right, but they at least you're doing your best to fit them on the page. Then you can understand the picture. Now maybe you got to turn it upside down, maybe you got to rotate it sideways, or change something out. That's okay. And as we were just talking about how this is evolving and we've evolved, then that's a good thing. It's not stagnant. As you were talking, I was thinking of the idea of a car. I always think of cars. I'm a car guy, but it popped into my head. Well, guess what? The car was invented, over 110 years ago, right? Model A. It still has four. Our cars today still have 4 wheels, 4 tires, brakes, a steering wheel, a windshield, and an engine. And okay, now they're totally advanced, clearly with all the electronics and everything, but they're still a car. So our approach in what we're doing now is we're just learning more things, whether it's methylene blue, whether it's poly, whether it's ozone. It's awesome, but it can be overwhelming. So, Kim has her sandbox, I have mine, the other trainers have theirs, and so it's great to be able to get this. At least her vision and I have, as we kind of naturally have talked over the years, is just let's get this place. And so now you've created this place, which I think is awesome in Idaho. So I can't wait to be a part of that in a deeper way, because just if I'm a fly on the wall, that's all I just want to listen. I want to learn. That's just how it happens granularly. And then all of a sudden these things start to evolve, and then someone gets better and someone does, and we try this and we try that. Okay, that's not natural to that. So I love it, and that's what got me into it. It started with cancer way back in the day. Dr. Forsyth, who just passed away earlier this year. So that's
You did?
yeah, he
I
passed
didn't
away.
know that.
January of this year. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Had a cardiovascular event and wasn't able to recover from it. And I mean, he was 82, I think he was.
Yeah, he's up there, but he was still practicing.
He was. And so, you know, he was truly the only board certified integrative oncologist that I've ever known. And he did the way he practiced, and that's all he saw. And he truly integrated both sides of the coin in a way that I've yet to see anybody else do. So that was my first foray into it, which then launched the Cancer Foundation, the Research Foundation, because research is where it really is. I can see things from my eyes, you can see things from your eyes, but they're just from our eyes. And so we all have a certain point of view, no matter how broad we want to look at, it's still only this direction. So getting more people in the same room that are open to that, and then sharing that information, and then saying, hey, how can we make the car better? Oh, cool, we got heated seats now. Oh, we got, you know, automatic starts. Oh, we just got push buttons. Oh, heck, we can control our car from our phone now. Great little things, but are they necessary? No, but in certain situations, they can be quite advantageous for safety, for fuel mileage, all the things that come along with cars. Well, imagine that in medicine. That's what we get to do right now. So I get totally excited about this. I know you do, Kim. So I'm just happy to be here to be able to share my little point of view of the world, of what I see and what I've heard from. And again, I just heard something new this morning with some, you know, liposomal methylene blue and how that's working for this one physician. So now I'm going to be looking down that road, and had some good talks with some of the other researchers about methylene blue and putting it in its proper position. Because at first, when methylene blue came out, I was sitting there scratching my head, going like, "Why is this familiar? Why is this familiar?" Yeah, they were using this for cancer roughly 20 years ago. Okay, and you know, so I had to, yeah, back then I didn't have everything organized on a computer like you do now. So I had to go and fish that out and go ask these doctors and talk to them about it. But now it's different. Okay, great. How is it different? What are they doing now versus then? And it's advanced. Okay, great. So to be able to share that is what I really enjoy.
Yeah, you brought up two things just to hit on really quickly is you remind me of uh this new conversation that's kind of happening in the peptide world where now people are being accused of cheating by optimizing their bodies with peptides. And
Right.
the response is, you know, you could ride a horse to work or you could drive a Tesla. Why would you go backwards once things have evolved into ways that we can, you know, maybe a luxury, but optimize our health in a much more specific way. So I think that's where some of these things do come in. And then number two is that yes, you and I have big dreams to do further research in this capacity because there's so many people doing IV therapy in different ways, different formulas. Just ozone alone, you know, so many ways to do it. So can we standardize something, put it into action, put it into motion with some type of system that collects data that can tell us what works truly over, you know, outside of just our scope, outside of just our practice. So and you guys hear me say it all the time. We're getting closer and closer to that. I met with Vibrant Labs a couple days ago, worked with Therium a little bit, like trying to figure out the best way to organize this. And Al is one of those people that will be, you know, we'll be grouped together to figure out how we can start to test outcomes a little bit more strategically. So all right. Well, tell us a little bit about PolyMVA. I think a lot of people here don't even know what it is. They don't know the structure of it and how it works individually. And then maybe we can start to compare to methylene blue. And I bet there's people on here that don't know methylene blue either. And maybe you're trying to weigh this out as what you bring into your practice. By the way, I think with our current setup in Zoom, we don't have the chat feature, but there is the Q&A. So you guys can't see each other right in the Q&A, but I can while Al talks. So if you have questions as we go, then just type those in the Q&A. I'll try to spit those back out at Al so we can get your thoughts put out there and your questions answered. If you're using Poly, there's a great chance to even ask Al some of those user-friendly questions. So yeah, tell us a little bit about the compound that is PolyMVA.
The key compound in poly, for those of you that don't know, it's a liquid dietary supplement. But its gift is what we call, right above my head up there where it says lipoic acid mineral complex. So if you think of lipoic acid, water and fat soluble antioxidant, however, it's bound to a mineral. That mineral being mineral palladium, and then covalently bound to thiamine. So you have thiamine and lipoic acid via a bridge. What that simply does is provides a redox capacity better than a single molecule. its ability to accept and donate electrons is its gift. And where that works at is on the mitochondria. So there's some other cofactors that are in it, some B2, some B12, some formylmethionine, some molybdenum. So as you mentioned earlier, Kim, kind of like a little mini Myers cocktail. Yes, from a nutritional perspective, yes, it's it's got some salt in it, it's got water. So as from a hydration perspective, it's simple, it's easy, it's a one and done from that perspective. But as that tool in your toolbox, when we think of other things that we have, methylene blue, we have ozone, we have NAD, we have glutathione, we have vitamin C, low dose, high dose. So these are other tools in our toolbox. The ironic thing is they all swim in the same area, targeting metabolic function at some point. So that's at the end of the day, that's the heart of this discussion. We're talking about a car, and I don't care whether we're talking about the Model A, we're talking about a horse, for that matter, we're talking about a Tesla, we're talking about hydrogen cars, whatever. That's the fuel. The energy has to be produced somehow. At the end of the day, bottom line, without energy, nothing is going to function. There'll be no expression of cell function, no communications, no activities, no expression of DNA, no turning on of this or turning off of that. So it all starts there. And I think, as most of the protocols have really shown, that's what we're targeting. So whether we're fixing a joint, we're supporting an oncology patient, we're having an athlete, as you mentioned, with your daughter's recovery from an injury. Well, okay, what are we talking? We're talking metabolics, we're talking mitochondria. But I think it's really important that says, well, where do these tools work, right? I mean, if you have a flat tire on your car, you better not go and, replace your brakes. You got a flat tire. So which is it that needs to be done? And sometimes we don't know. So we're trying these different things. And I think that's where that research is really helping out to determine, okay, XYZ individual needs this, the other patient needs this. Do you do this one first? Do you do that one? It doesn't know necessarily. The great thing with poly is it likes to play both, as I call it, offense and defense, because of being not just a redox molecule. So let's rewind our what is a redox molecule, right? Something that's going to accept and donate an electron. Okay, so that's basic chemistry, right? Something has to get reduced, something has to get oxidized. So there's an exchange of an electron at that point. The better that can happen. So if we're thinking of playing tennis or ping pong or what's the new sport out there? Pickleball, right? What are you doing? It has to go back and forth, right? And you love a good volley, right? It doesn't just hit it once across and hit it once across. No, going back and forth, back and forth. And the better you can do that at a equalized rate, at a balanced rate, then the funner the game is, but also the better our cells operate. So it really is kind of that simple from a scientific and electron transport perspective. But how that happens in any one single cell, let alone 30 trillion cells of the human body, it gets pretty complicated from that perspective. So poly helps to balance out that redox reaction. That's poly's gift in a nutshell. And it does it via a unique mechanism because of that complex I just talked about. That's its gift. So that's its main mechanism of action. But it's not a single molecule. So unlike methylene blue, unlike ozone, unlike vitamin C, unlike glutathione, unlike NAD, that are single molecules, poly has multiple sides to it. So it can play both offense and defense at the same time at different spaces, because we have multiple mitochondria, multiple folds along that mitochondria doing different things at different times. Not everything is happening at the same rate at the same time in any one cell, let alone in all our cells. So we have to be able to be dynamic to that. Well, our cells have to as well. Poly allows that flexibility to do so that ultimate repair, restoration, or rejuvenation can happen for that cell regardless of its state. How's that?
I like it. Yeah, that's a good overview. Last time we were talking, we were kind of diving into the stage 1 to 4 within the electron transport chain.
Right.
And the way that I understand and even teach methylene blue is that you can, with that redox capacity, you can basically make more energy with less energy, which is an interesting concept because you want, metabolism is equalized by using energy as well as making it.
Right.
But the concept cellularly biochemistry, and even just as it translates into a person's daily life, is to create more energy with less energy. So how, in terms of the electron transport chain, does PolyMVA compare with methylene blue that way?
That's a great question, and it speaks directly to then what tool does what, right? So if we think of the complexes, as you mentioned, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's what we call the chain, and it has to start at 1, which is NAD, has to go to complex 2, which is succinate, has to go to complex 3, which is cytochrome, hold on, cytochrome, not C, cytochrome oxidase is number 4, cytochrome, shoot, dehydrogenase, I think this, anyways, on that cytochrome. So each one has to do its job before you can't go from 1 to 4, right? And function properly. It has to go, you have to walk on each step and go through that process. Now, as you mentioned, doing more with less, that's efficiency, right? And so I like to talk about that from miles per gallon, right? Who doesn't want a car? You have the same car, one gets 20 miles a gallon, the other one gets 50 miles a gallon. Not because it's any better, but it's designed to be much more efficient. Okay. In cellular life and metabolics, the better you can do that, it's conservation of energy, right? Basic physics at the same point. So our cells want to do that, and they're actually lean and mean to do that for the long term. They're playing the long game. They're not playing the sprint. They're playing the marathon. And so doing that over the course of time, the more efficient you are at doing that, then guess what? The longer we're going to live, the healthier we're going to live. And by that definition, the less disease it's going to be, right? So that's where the efficiency of these different molecules then can come into play. If we're deficient on NAD and you give someone NAD, they feel better. Okay, great. You can give someone simply glutathione and they'll feel better. Why? Because they were deficient in complex 4 for glutathione, or it wasn't playing and recycling some other antioxidants and helping out the liver. So sometimes you can land on the single one you need, but it's a team sport. And keeping to the sports metaphor, you can't play with just one person, right? Whether you're playing volleyball or football, you need a minimum number of individuals to at least play. And if they don't show up, then you have to forfeit. Well, when a cell forfeits, that means zero energy is going to come from that, and simply the cell goes into that survival mode. So we call that generally anaerobic respiration. Well, guess what? Our muscles can do that normally. So that's not a problem. That's basic physiology. But if a muscle cannot survive, and if it keeps building up, it has a byproduct, lactic acid, yada, yada, yada. But what does it need? It needs to get restoration to normal metabolics. If it does that, it'll survive. If it doesn't, it will ultimately fail and die. So how can these mechanisms support that pathway? Well, poly supports all the complexes because it's not a single molecule. NAD works at complex 1, glutathione works at complex 4. Methylene blue, what is methylene blue's? That was my first question I asked about it. What does methylene blue do? Well, it's not like it just showed up yesterday. It's been around for over 100 years, and it's primarily used to do what? To help convert methemoglobin to hemoglobin and red blood cells. So they can do what? Carry more oxygen. Well, where does oxygen work? At complex 3 and complex 4. Where does methylene blue happen to do most of its work? At complex 4. However, it is unique in a sense because it can also work at complex 1. Okay, so it can facilitate NADH and NADP because that's how red blood cells get. Their red blood cells don't have mitochondria, so they have to get that through another pathway, the pentose pathway. Oh, wow, pentose pathway. Okay, so you start diving down that road, and this is where it really opens the, okay, if this is the tool I have, and that's what I'm trying to fix, then that's the tool I want to use. That's simple enough. And by simplified mind, that's how I apply it. Then from there, we can say, okay, yeah, but this person also is low in magnesium and potassium. Yes, now we're talking the full recipe, okay? And they need some PTC because their membranes and the long chain fatty acids, they're the final acceptors of those electrons for how ATP is produced. So it isn't one or the other. There is no silver bullet, but how do we build these together? So that's what walked me down the process of how this interacted and how is it benefiting. The downside with methylene blue is that clearly it's a drug. Clearly it needs to be prescribed under the care of a physician. Clearly it has a toxicity because if you give too much, what does it actually do? it reverses and becomes too oxidative, stops the ability. So there you go. So by understanding its mechanism, now we can understand the better tool that we have and apply it to any one patient specific situation.
You said so much. Um, my mind just like goes crazy. You may have been obvious with this, but I don't think there's ever you can make that assumption for anybody. In terms of poly and this, let's say, epidemic of mitochondrial dysfunction or dysregulation, and you talk about the cofactors, the members on the team that can signal or can trigger or can help the electron transport chain inside mitochondrial and everything it needs to do work better. If the patient, and we all do to some degree, has too little or too little cofactor or too much dysregulation or dysfunction, is there a downside to poly? I mean, if you're trying to trigger something that somebody is just honestly deficient in without giving them that thing, then can you do damage at all? Like you said, even in a dose dependent state with methylene blue, you can overdo it, which most things you can overdo. But does PolyMVA always support better function, or is there ever a time maybe not to use it?
Not that we found. That just usually comes down to dose dependent as to when it's going to be beneficial. So being water and fat soluble and out of lipoic acid and thiamine, guess what? If the body doesn't use it, it will simply discharge it. So it'll clear through the kidneys, through the liver. The overload that you might get with too much poly would be too much mitochondrial activity, but this is different. This isn't like what caffeine does or melatonin or so. By triggering another process, it simply says to the mitochondria, I'm here to work for you. Do you have a job for me to do? If things are broken and it doesn't have a job to do, then poly can't do its job and it just hangs out until it just goes away and gets cycled out of the system. So it's not going to trigger a negative effect biologically or biochemically like something like methylene blue will. So it's not that too much is going to hurt it. It would just simply be removed out of the system. But at the same time, it's about balance. So this is where we found that it dosage dependent, what the body can absorb. Generally, at the max is a 40 ml dose, depending upon the individual. But again, I had a woman this morning. She told me she used 2 drops and she felt better. And I kind of scratched my head on that one, going, 2 drops. Wow, I just took 2 teaspoons. And I'm like, but clearly, if that's what she needed at that time, then great, okay. And that doesn't mean it's going to be the end all be all for her, but it's what was needed. So if you're dehydrated, drink water, right? So you might also need some protein and some other carb, but if you're dehydrated, you got to drink water first. So that once you get there, now you can move to the next one and to the next one to get that repair from that situation.
Do you know what I love about poly from so many different perspectives is it's not just a single ingredient. However, it appears like one, meaning you're drawing up one vial to put in your IV bag or put in your mouth or put in your eye. By the way, you can apply this just about any way. You can take it orally, you can do IM, you can do a push, you can put it in an IV bag, you can do anything with it. But it appears from the pharmacy 797 compliance, et cetera, as one thing. But that said, it just reiterating, it's got the built-in cofactors, which I think is so important when I explain ozone these days, especially when it comes to the higher doses. And I think you and I talked about this before, is that beyond the electron transport chain and the mitochondria, then becomes the Krebs cycle.
Right.
And the Krebs cycle requires, I explain it to carry on with your automotive parallel. I explain it like the engine in a car or a lawnmower or whatever. You need those components to heat it to get it running. And then you
Right.
need those components that are going to help cool it at the same time. It's got
Right.
to be in balance. If you do too much to heat it,
That's
it
correct.
will overheat, maybe exhaust the cell, maybe spit out the wrong waste or too much waste or oxidative stress. without those other cofactors that help to cool it. And if you look up, this doesn't seem to be something people have studied in a long time, but if you research what are the compounds, cofactors, etc., that create that balance, it's vitamins, it's
Hmm.
minerals, it's
Right.
these things too. So when we do ozone as a single thing, you have to also include these other ingredients, which I think is just the best like standard of care in terms of ozone. And we learn that more and more with these results we see from, practices, including mine, that are applying it. But one of the great things about poly is you have those built-in cofactors that balance out the compound, just as you say, and make it available. And however the body uses it, it will discard whatever it doesn't. But it acts like, meaning in practical sense, it acts like a single ingredient that you can put into, again, an IV bag, a push. You can give it to your patients orally. They can take it home. They can, you can put it in, I mean, IM joints, whatever, and it is, something that can be uptaken,
Right.
uptook.
Well, you're right. I'll let you slide on that one, okay. Well, and it's no accident. So they're not in there from some haphazard reason. Dr. Garnett, who created, invented, and founded this, realized he tested 20,000 different compounds before he landed on this one. So poly wasn't something that was stumbled upon; it was looked for very specifically, and those cofactors are in there for that exact reason, to attenuate and regulate that metabolic activity. As a side note, based upon what you just said, if we just took the complex by itself, we'd run a fever. So
Hmm.
in other words, let's say you have a campfire and you want to get more heat out of it. Okay, you can fan those flames with a paper plate and blow more air on it. Or what if you put pure oxygen on it? You're going to superheat that thing, but you're going to also burn through your fuel faster. So as you mentioned, the heating and the cooling have to be in balance. If you run out of fuel, having pure oxygen around did you no good really, because you needed that fire to last another 3 hours. Oh, you just burned it out in an hour and a half. Okay, that didn't work. So the body naturally balances it based upon signaling molecules, signaling mechanisms, neurological activity. Oh, it's fight or flight. Okay, engage. Oh, it's a game of volleyball. Okay, great. It's now halftime. I can take a break. Body will respond accordingly, and then we can train it to, of course, to get to a higher response rate and a better athletes. What do? They train continuously to reach their peak, and then once they reach their peak, there you go. They're going to try and maintain that as long as they can. It's easier to maintain, and then time goes on. But our cells do this naturally without even thinking about it, but we don't process it from that perspective.
Yeah.
uh, we can totally understand it as an analogy of a sports athlete or something, but guess what? Your body, my body today had to do X, Y, and Z today. Okay, I had to recover from an 18-hour day of flying from yesterday. So it needs a little bit more today than it would have normally need. If tomorrow I'm going to sit my butt on the couch all day long, then chances are I'm not going to need a lot more. If it's going to be 110 degrees outside and 80% humidity, again, the environment will dictate and the body will respond. We then have to give it those nutrients to do so. So it's no coincidence that by these protocols to repair and restore these individuals has to come from that understanding. Where are they in their journey, and what are they missing so that can be restored and let them do what they were designed to do.
Yeah, I was listening and thinking at the same time, are there cofactors to methylene blue
Mm-hmm.
that could be benefit? Like I know, like one of my favorite things about methylene blue is it's photo excited, right? So it goes a lot of, like right along with our O3 UV devices or the
Mm-hmm.
Champion full spectrum. And then there's other devices out there as well. You can even take it orally and have it respond to, red light therapy. But are there other cofactors to methylene blue? I mean, I'm guessing just hydration, cellular hydration would be one, and oxygen, but um, I don't know the answer to that.
Well, the cool thing with methylene blue is as a single molecule, it can actually dance around the electron transport chain more so than anything else. That's what gives it its next advantages, I would say. So sometimes complexes can get jammed up. So from complex 1 to complex 2 to complex 3 and complex 4. So what you can do is sometimes throw a few extra electrons through complex 4 to keep that going. So it's like an extension cord. You're bypassing it just for the time being, so you can fix complex 2 and 3 or 1 and 2, and what does that need? That needs vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients to fix those complexes. And then once they come back online, then everything's great. So in the short term, and I think that's where methylene blue is so much more powerful than other things, because it can dance around those complexes, whereas NAD is just going to work at complex 1.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's such a great reminder and emphasis there. If you don't mind, let's spend the rest of the time kind of going into the practical side of this.
sure.
This is just a taste. You can contact Al at anytime. He's amazing to answer everything, practically everything personally, and to help you onboard this and get your protocols and everything in place. But you have a little bit of information there, how it compares to methylene blue. But now on the practical side, and Chris, Dr. Chris, you've posted a question here, which is a great kickoff for us. He obviously knows PolyMVA and says it's had a place in cancer for a long time. But now, where is it with SIRS, long COVID, et cetera? Like in terms of, I mean, I think if you look at what we just talked about, it has a place everywhere. It has a place in even just optimization. And hey, I was on an airplane for 18 hours and all that entails. But what are you seeing? Let's say that. Let's talk maybe in terms of long COVID or SIRS, or right now it's reactivated Epstein-Barr virus, and the actual protocols.
Well, outside that, it's in the same waters of mitochondria that are being pressured upon from whether it's long COVID, whether it's Epstein-Barr, whether it's whatever flare-up is putting pressure on that metabolic aspect. That's where the complex is going to help support it to keep it going, and so that until we can get that repaired, right, or stop that cytokine storm, stop that inflammation, stop that negative impact to what's causing those cells to become dysfunctional. So because it all requires that energy. So a question you usually get asked is like from the immune perspective, how does it support immune function? I always ask the question, I go, do you realize how much mitochondrial energy your immune system is going to use when it gets kicked on? Tons. And this is part of what happened, and we learned, especially during the pandemic, is that created a dysfunction which delayed the immune system's ability to identify and go after what it needed to. And therefore, in that delayed time, all of a sudden, if there were any comorbidities, the individual's overall health was declining before it got to critical. And then we were really fighting an uphill battle from that perspective. So this is where keeping the motor running all the time, right? And that's the beauty of it. I just thought of another analogy. Imagine not ever having to warm up your car, right, and restart it. It's always running. All you got to do is jump in and keep going. So rather than have to, if it's really cold outside, and you're in Idaho, so you might have to spend, a good 5 or 10 minutes to just warm up your car and get everything warmed up. What do? You actually plug it in sometimes, right? So in the severe cold places, that's what they do. They actually plug in a vehicle to keep it warm so that it doesn't take as long to get going again. So that's where Poly's role really has branched out over the past decade now, a little over that. It's especially in the athletes, these athletes that we see that have such a high level of, that's their job. And so they have such a regiment of what they eat, when they sleep, how they work out, what their recovery is. Yeah, it doesn't make you, superhuman by any means, but what it does is it allows that your motor to keep running. Okay, great. Restoring,
That's what's
repairing.
interesting about the athlete, whether you be like me or like, a true like pro athlete who's in their prime, is they're actually using more and requiring more, and probably even in burnout mode more if they don't fuel that accurately. So it's like you're the healthier portion of the population, and yet if you're not careful, you could easily deplete yourself in even similar ways to like a chronic disease patient.
Well, and that's what happens to them. I mean, for I'm sure you've seen it in the athletic world. That's easy to happen. Burnout is easy to, and it's not just physically, it's also neurologically, emotionally, mentally. How does that play into the mitochondrial role when you look at the amount of energy required to keep that in balance? That's a phenomenal amount of energy. It's 3 times the amount of what our muscles utilize. Muscles are easy to fix, right? And we don't really too often come across, diseases of the muscles, cancers of the muscles. No, they're of organs, right? They're of the subsystems that then control those tissues. So it's pretty phenomenal when you look at it and understand it from that perspective, because then it allows us to look at the tools that we do have and say, this is why a nice combination of, glutathione, methylene blue, and poly is just nice.
Yeah, it's I think it's a little bit of a dance, but that's the beauty and the challenge of what we do, is just when and how to apply these things. What I love about the things I really dig into, or why I think I'm attracted to them, is because if you go to that core mitochondrial atomic, communication, basic foundational pieces, then you really, you can't go wrong really with how you're applying it to these patients. I helped a provider put together a longevity treatment plan package system for his office in Florida earlier this year. And it's like, in terms of longevity, in terms of what we're all inundated, plus we all want to live forever and feel amazing the entire time. I don't know if I want to live forever, but I want to feel amazing the whole time. What would you put in this? And we created a 12-week program that was a couple IVs of a lot of things, targeted at different mitochondrial components. And so a couple chelation, a couple ozone, a couple methylene blue, a couple of PolyMVAs. Because these are the things that regardless of your lifestyle and where you live, et cetera, you just want to maintain with these, fundamental, I guess, the pillars of things. I want to ask, I think you answered it in a different way, but I wanted to ask, is there any direct targeting on viral, bacterial, fungus, yeast, mold, or is it more that indirect through the immune function and just creating the energy so the immune function can happen optimized?
It's the indirect function. So because the energy required to create more NK killer cells, T cells, B cells, lymphocytes, that's tremendous. So that's where it's supporting and propping that up while the immune system does what it does best.
All right, so that leads me to like all the other components that you might want to add in terms of targeting infection reactivated stuff, long haulers, which of course, so you all know I love ozone and I love UV. So does Al actually. And so you just mentioned methylene blue, poly-MVA, and glutathione. There's that kind of trifecta. If we were to tack on ozone and UV, where would it fit in that truly, in like the succession of treatments in an IV room for a patient? Because you have the redox capacity of it, and then ozone is, creating that oxidation at first, but then triggering these antioxidants. What have you seen work the best in terms of sequence?
So generally you preload. So because of what ozone does specifically, like I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question and answer it for everybody. Like what's the difference between 18 gamma and 35?
Uh, a couple of numbers, a couple of
Right.
digits.
Concentration, right?
Concentration, yes.
Concentration. So in other words, it's adding more oxidative pressure or capability to the system. Is that what the system needs? So sometimes the answer is yes. Other times you clearly understand when you gave someone a higher level of it, the answer was, oh no, they didn't do so well. It triggered a cytokine. It created too much oxidation that it wasn't able to balance it out. It has to stay in balance, right? So because ozone ultimately is O3, liberating its extra oxygen molecule, leaving a base of oxygen to go and support. But this little oxidative molecule is going to go dance with somebody somewhere. And did it dance with the right dance partner? We hope it did. If it doesn't, then it can create a negative response if it's out of balance. So generally speaking, you set the table for make sure that cell has its antioxidant capability. Like when you give an antioxidant, they don't just go to work immediately. They can hang around for some time. They don't just immediately activate. They can be swimming in the waters, hanging out, and it's when needed, they get called upon. Hey, coach called them in. All right, they run in, do their play, they run back out. Cool. If those are not available when you give an oxidative protocol, then that's where you're going to get that negative response.
Yeah, that's where I talk about the heating and the cooling of the cell. If you don't have
correct.
both, it's just not
That's
gonna
right.
bode
Yeah.
well.
So to your awesome analogy of a car heating and cooling system, great. The engine heats, so you need the car to run, but if your cooling system isn't working, then you're going to overheat in 5 miles. Oh, but it's 35 degrees outside. Okay, well, guess what? You might be able to go 15 miles now. Oh, it's 110 outside. Oh, you're not even getting a mile down the road. So you see the difference in its ability to keep that in balance. And if it can't do it, then it's going to stop. If it can do it, then we can continue through that protocol and then cycle it again, right? It's not a one-time event and going, oh, look, is the patient better? No, we know better than that. It requires 6, 8, 12 visits over the course of the next 6, 12, 15 weeks, whatever it might be, to restore that balance so that we can now hand it back off to the body and say, are you good? You can do this on your own now? Don't need any more help? Okay, there you go.
So you'd preload with poly, whether it be orally or IM or IV. Would you, if it's IV, would you do an ozone treatment like in the same day, or would you
Mm-hmm.
okay, same day?
Well,
Then
so
there,
let me say, depending upon the patient status, right? If they are so depleted, then the answer would be no. But if they're prepared and you prepared them for that, and you've looked at their blood work, ran their G6PDs, you know that they're stable in all their minerals, their blood work comes back looking good, okay. But to just hook somebody up to it without even no.
okay, okay. And then so glutathione as an antioxidant as well, phase two, all those things, where
Mhm.
do you see the best place to fit in again, if you're kind of doing some type of treatment plan or combo?
Well, and if we had a picture of the electron transport chain in front of us, we'd want to build it backwards, right? So instead of having to start from that, that's the basics that we have to work from. So knowing where glutathione works, um, you know, lipids, fats, PTC. If, let's start at the cell membrane. If that cell membrane is not functioning to let the things in and out of the cell, then what's the point of driving all these awesome nutrients in there if the cell can't even absorb it, right? That's a whole different discussion we could have. Is you could have
Yeah,
these levels of nutrients in the blood top notch, but if the cell can't absorb it, then or its cofactor isn't available, then okay.
my little
So
longevity protocol, we had two PTCs also, phosphatidyl,
awesome,
like
awesome. Yep.
like the same thing. You got to have things in balance, a little bit of all of it, but
Hmm.
yeah, it's got to be permeable to get
That's
things
correct.
in and out of it,
So
and then create that waste too.
well, and you talked about the efficiency. If that's efficiency, both getting the gas into your car's engine as well as getting your exhaust pipe out, right? Go take a potato and shove it in your tailpipe of your car. Yeah, it's not going to work, even if your car's running fine, because it can't get out the exhaust. Okay, well, if our cells can't get that out, and our liver pathways and our kidney pathways and phase two, we'll get phase one's work in the liver, but not phase two, and phase three shut off. Then what's the point of putting all these awesome products in there when that's messed up? So I've just kind of defaulted to, the patients and the clients, they're toxic, they're detox pathways, and they're dehydrated, and they're lacking. So work it backwards from there, and then it's just funny how it can easily take care of itself going forward.
All right. So, I mean, I think there's the practical sides too of like the average, mLs. I don't know if you measure it in milligrams. I think it's more just mLs because it's that compound.
Correct.
Um, but, and we can, again, I think like if you're really ready to bring this into your practice, you can definitely, I've got some of those protocols we built together actually for that longevity program and some other things, but what they can do, there is the question like seeing it on your little, a lot of people are familiar to some degree. So seeing that it comes in these like plastic bottles as a supplement. Now microplastics are such a big thing everybody's talking about, but I have that in my fridge. I take it orally every day. I've also filtered it for family members' IVs, but for you guys, you probably want to order it from pharmacy where it's already been, where it's prepared for you guys in the application that you're using it. Um, and I know you've had to, like everything else, figure this out from a totally different business standpoint, is which pharmacies. And also, um, they've rebranded it, not rebranded, but they call it something like Tex or Drug Crafters calls it lipoic mineral
Yeah.
compound or something.
Uh, yeah. lipoic mineral. Shoot, now I lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, they call it a different name, but it's just different versions. Because for a lot of the physicians, they just the easiest way is if they're utilizing ALA, then because this is an ALA base that already has the cofactors with it, so much more stable, so much more efficient, and that's what it is. And real quickly, and it's not that more is better, right? So this is where if you've looked in these integrated protocols and worked with them, you find that okay, if you just had to use ozone, it's this big hammer. If all of a sudden you're using ozone along with a Myers type cocktail, oh, guess what? You can use a little hammer, and then this. Oh, it's ozone along with methylene blue, Myers cocktail, and guess what? You can actually use less of those ingredients because you're getting this team effort that works together, which gives much more functionality to the cells, to their responses, to how they feel, that's working on their detox pathway, that's hydrating them at the same time, that's revving up their mitochondria. Okay, that's a win-win across the board. So the mentality that we have to fix it and fix it now, no, it's understand it first, see what you're working with, and then augment that as you go forward. And the long-term success in patients is just far more successful than let's just do a load, let's just hit them with some oxygen, let's hit them with high dose poly. No, don't do that. Do not do that, please.
Yeah, and I would remind everybody listening to look at that same perspective when you're looking at the pricing of all this stuff, whether it be your wholesale price or your retail price. I gave lots of presentations at the end of my span with MedMasters that are still on their YouTube if you want to go there, but like at Mastering Ethical Sales, because the first day of that training was when you understand the science behind this and what makes sense for the patient, it's so much easier to prescribe multiple things, right? The second piece of that is poly comes as multiple things in one. But when you look at like the pricing of a Olympia Myers cocktail and the price of PolyMVA, you're not going to like the price of PolyMVA, but you
Right,
can't, that's not comparing apples to apples.
right.
But in the long run, when you use a comprehensive compound that can take the place of some of these, like multiple other IVs, now it's actually quite cost effective to do
Yeah.
poly-MVA. So there are a few pharmacies that are putting this in sterile bottles and checking it and testing it and whatever else. I don't think we got Texas Star off the ground with that yet. But Drug Crafters has it and
College pharmacy.
College Pharmacy, yes,
Yeah.
has it. If you want to do it IV, IM, all of those. If you want to get it from Al, he's got like the pictured here in the plastic bottle that you can literally drink like Kool-Aid every morning. Um, and he makes it with juice or coffee or something, and you can't really taste it because B vitamins nobody really loves
Right.
how they taste. It's not my favorite tasting stuff, but you can mix it with something and you don't taste anything. So even in that regard, it's not the cheapest like nutraceutical you're going to prescribe to somebody. But again, quality and comprehension of the whole thing, and then how it can reach and target so many aspects of core value at cellular function, I think is actually quite cost effective.
Yeah, I mean, the term I think is, as we've discussed before, it's value, right? Yes, things cost differently. Okay, you can go to McDonald's and buy a hamburger. You can go to Applebee's and buy a hamburger. You can go to the grocery store and buy the ground beef and make the hamburger, but that'll require your time, and you have to factor in that. So, yeah, it's never apples to apples, but it's value and also what you may enjoy to do and work it together. And that's where I see the integrated physicians and what you've set up is that it's this working together. It's not picking and choosing that it has to be this or not either or. It's and. That's the power of it, and that's what makes the difference. And just look at the research, and that's where it keeps showing it's not a single molecule.
Yeah, so by the way, Al's got gobs of research and gobs of papers and different things that when you want to reach out to him directly, he'll share all that with you. I've got quite a bit of it too, but I'll let you go directly to him because he knows his product the best and also the protocols, etc. Um, you've got a couple pharmacies where they can get it that way, and we'll share your contact information. I don't think you have like order from your site type stuff, but just get in touch with Al directly. And I was going to ask another question. Oh, you and I had talked about this whole deal with ozone, yes, but with EBU, and
Okay.
I'm in the process of getting that into my clinic so I can specifically compare how this goes with whatever it is, chelation and EBU, poly and EBU, methylene blue and EBU. We do a lot of methylene blue, so I'm really curious to compare that. Even just the subjective point of view from the patient is like, did you feel different with this than you did with
Right.
MB? But from the practical side, again, the cost component of you don't have to buy multiple ingredients
Right.
in order to make a comprehensive compound is also really nice. Like you drop from one vial, you put it into some saline, and you've got your new bag. The second, so again, in compliance and pharmacy regulations and so on and so forth, that's really nice. The other thing in terms of real business here is you're not going to see this. Tell me if I'm wrong on this, and I'm sure it would be nice on the business side for you. You're not going to see this at your Prime IV or your like this is like real medicine that providers are doing. It's what I'm saying is it's not run of the mill and it's not something you're going to get in an easy hydration bar. They just haven't done this yet. So it's going to set you apart to be able to offer this from a marketing standpoint, from a sales standpoint, from a mitochondrial standpoint. Like it's something you can offer and provide that stands out and is different, but is also very simple to use. So
Right.
I think there's
And
a lot of cost reward benefits there too.
there is, the two that makes me think of it is one, high dose vitamin C. Okay, who's not going to be able to benefit from, let's say, 5 to a 15,000, gram IV vitamin C? Pretty much everybody, right? Okay, when you start cranking 35, you start cranking 50, you start cranking 75 and 100, no. Okay, and then that takes time and then your cost is now going to increase,
Yeah.
not because your vial of vitamin C costs more, but now your chair time costs you more. NAD, right? So this is where, since poly works at complex 1, upregulating NAD dehydrogenase, then guess what? You can just do the oral and you get that support. So what we're really looking into now is, how in which IV space is what really necessary. Like to get the effect of ozone, you got no choice, and, unless you can do it rectally, of course, but from an IV perspective. But if EBU, you got no choice. With UVBI, you got no choice. High dose vitamin C, you have no choice. Other nutritions that you need from it, you have no choice. But with NAD, methylene blue, and poly, you have choices. And that's where, because of what they do and how they work, what if you could save that patient and get them 2 more IV treatments and then just give them the oral of these other things? That's a win-win. So this is where we're really looking into, and what I really appreciate about Kim doing is designing these things out, because it's what's best for the patient, right? Not necessarily what's best for our schedules. I'm sure we've all been hit with like, well, can I get all these IVs today? Because I just got to, and you're like, no, you
Yeah, and
can't.
you try to maximize that. I mean, that's a consideration, but you also don't want to waste their time and money in the long run.
That's
So,
right.
totally. That's it. That's what I call ethical sales. Is like from the scientific standpoint.
Yeah.
But when you can explain that, and I think Al and I do a pretty good job of some of these analogies and different things that you can carry on to your patients that help them understand this a little bit better. So it's like, oh, okay, well, let me come in twice a week then instead of once a week, so I can maximize what I'm doing here. So, um. I didn't realize I wasn't scrolling very well, but some of these questions really quick were down to the wire, but just really quick. We'll get your phone number or email or whatever out as soon as we're done so that people can start to contact you there. Several in terms of, I mean, again, you can contact Al directly on this, but um, like for the oral. How many mLs, how often, with or without food, AM, PM, daily, bedtime, before, during, like just
Okay.
generalization there.
So it's a liquid, doesn't require any food to bind to it. It'll absorb directly without it. So the only reason to mix it, say during or after food, would be if someone has a really sensitive stomach for whatever reason. You can do it sublingual, you can hold it in, or you can just drink it with some tea or water. Ideally, at least first thing in the morning. And again, if you're trying to average this out over someone's day who gets that afternoon crash, or that's when things happen, then give it 2 times a day, right? Because you're looking at clearance rates, right? How long does something take to metabolize? Some people, and then you look at absorbability as well. So is their gut, are they have any gut issues? Fix that gut. Use low doses. Don't use those high doses, because mitochondria are on that gut tissue as well. as that, and then you can start picking up and getting those higher doses, but at least 2 times a day, half a teaspoon twice a day at minimum, and then you can augment that to, 2 teaspoons 4 times a day as an example for someone who needs that more support. That's great. They're doing an oxidative day to day, but they don't have time to do anything else, then great. Do the poly in the morning before they get there, do the poly after they leave. Perfect. Okay. So it provides you with the ability to really support that patient throughout their course of their protocol that you set up for them. That's the gift. That's what works. Not the silver bullet. It's not the magical concoction that's going to, no, it's the consistency that we've seen in and out over time. Dr. Forsyth, who pioneered that, as I mentioned earlier, he just added it. And then from there, he added it and said, okay, well, I'm giving nutritionals. Let me give it after the nutritionals. Then he said, you know what, let me just average this out over 7 days a week over his 6 to 10 week protocol. And it improved his outcomes 20%, not because he was using anything different, but because he averaged it out over the course of time. That was it.
It's good to know. The next question always is like typical cost, and you can say if you know what your averages are with your clinicians, but for me here, actually just all together, I try to make the cost so as universal as possible. So whether this IV costs me $60 or $75 or $35, I'm looking at the overall value to the patient, to even like the mitochondria. But it's again, I teach so much on this, but the psychology of how patients engage in your services from a cash standpoint really comes down a lot to do with the risk factor. And this is a totally different subject, but when you can make this real simple to understand and you're like, hey, we've got a longevity package. It's got 12 IVs, one a week for 12 weeks.
Right.
And it's just this lump sum. That's great. If you want to break that down, whether it be my Myers, which I do a pretty fancy Myers, no less than 10 grams of vitamin C, or it be my chelation, or it be my high dose ozone, or it be my methylene blue, I'm charging the same amount for those. They're all the same retail cost. And so for my poly bags, I'm still around the 250 mark like I am with everything else. And law of averages plays out there where you do make a little bit more on some, a little bit less on others, but the presentation to the patient is very easy to understand. So our IVs, for the most part, are $250. So I lay a little bit of that groundwork with the principle behind it versus saying, this dose of poly, this frequency, etc. When we, stay so true to the structure of 50% markup or something. I just look at it over time and try to keep that presentation to the patient pretty simple to understand. So for me, I'm around that 250 range for them, no matter what. And I do range in somewhere between, I think my cheapest IV is about $48, $50. And they can definitely get up into $85, $90. Depending on what you're adding into it, some amino acids, some protein, whatever you're putting into some of these things. But again, I'm charging about $250 for any of those. High dose vitamin C or NAD. NAD always gets to be the more expensive IV there. Sometimes you've got to have maybe a third tier of structure there. So you got like the IM, and then you've got your bulk of your IVs, and then you've got maybe your top tier, which might be like your EBU or your NAD or something. But I don't know. What do you see, Al, on the pricing?
Well, the average is you're solid right there on that number there. But for the physicians out there, identify what we call your deliverables. Well, these things that you're going to do. You can't do everything. Don't try to do everything. Find what you do and what you like and focus in on that top 10, let's call it. It'll be a lot easier on you. It'll be a lot easier on your office manager and your accountant, on everybody, and you'll find that when you become efficient with those top 10 tools, then you'll only need the other ones every now and then under a specialty circumstance, or you just farm that out to somebody else because this is your lane that you've just defined yourself. So define those deliverables for yourself, and then it makes it easier to then put those longevity packages together that Kim just talked about. Understand that if your rent space is only 80 cents a square foot versus $4 a square foot, then that's a big
Yeah,
difference, right?
yeah, you're gonna
And
you're gonna be charging something different.
so there isn't a set fee necessarily, because this you should know what your overhead time and everything is should be, and then from there you can make better decisions on what it would be. But 250 is more than enough fare, and like you said, you can then augment that with add-ons at 45 to 80 to $95. They'll
Yeah.
get better, they'll do better. You'll have good solid income stream, and you can support your patients.
Yeah, just about to kind of, well, to include some other things. So somebody's asking like the same thing for methylene blue. I get all mine from Progress Pharmacy, connected to New BioAge Nutraceuticals, Leonard and Frank. I know them really well. Know them because their product is amazing, and got to know them after the fact, meaning it's not a plug. I don't get paid to say that or anything. But I love their methylene blue. It's hospital grade methylene blue. It's pretty standard, but they're not licensed in every state. Vertisis sells methylene blue. I mean, you can get hospital grade methylene blue too, but that's where I get it, is Progress Pharmacy. Um, and I am charging about the same thing for that too, about 250 250 for that, depending again on the packages. And then the dosage for poly, and well, I mix poly in sterile water.
Okay.
250, 500. I did create these protocols. I can pull them up, but um what's your recommendation on the carrier? And doesn't it range about 10 mLs to 50 mLs?
Uh, that's the max, yeah. Usually, it could be start off at 5, then you go to 10, and then you can max out generally at 40, depending upon their body weight. Normal saline is typically all you need, so just adjust that if you're using sterile water, but usually it's D5W saline, even a lactated ringer if you need to. So, and it's a quick one that we talked about again. Monitor, look at their blood sugars. It's easy to do. Do those intakes that Kim is
need so that she can so you can better assess your patient based upon what it is that you're giving them. That's the key, right?
Yeah.
It people respond differently to different things. I've seen different IVs drop 20 points in blood sugar. Right? You're like, whoa. And
People will do
if you let
that.
them go out the door that way, it's not going to be good. So
Yeah, people do that. I'm like so big on just checking it and having people eat before they come in and having good snacks. In fact, our office just partnered with Just Ingredients. Can't remember her name right now, the formulator, but she's pretty close to me in Utah, but she's got a clear protein drink that we now stock in the office, so that if somebody needs to, they can purchase that and get a good quality product. But yeah, it's so simple. It's so simple. You've got, okay, 5 to 40 mLs in normal saline, D5W, lactated ringers. It can go in, pretty quickly. It stabilizes alpha lipaic. So if you are somebody who's ever given ALA, and you can have that total shift that's uncomfortable for patients and you as well, you don't have that with poly. You can definitely compete with methylene blue, as we've described, and hopefully helped you understand. It meets 797s to a high degree. You've got a couple pharmacies you could buy it from that are glass and endotoxin tested and so on and so forth. You have an oral application that you can do with it. I don't know. I think it's one of the, like, really, for a lot of reasons, a really magic compound for what we do in our industry today. So last question, completely unrelated. Ebu is about, yeah, we charge about $1,500 per session, or that's the national average. We know that through our clients. I've seen as low as 800. I've seen, well, other manufacturers, you can, and just like Al was saying, if you're in Miami and you're in Los Angeles, your costs are so much more expensive. I've seen it go for $7,000 a treatment. So I don't think that's fair. That's not what I would charge, although I have seen the rent in San Francisco, and sometimes that might be necessary. But yeah, methylene blue is Progress Pharmacy, and Vertisis, or I always say Vertisis, but some people say Vertisis. They're out of Arizona. And again, these guys are licensed in many states, but not all states. So depending on where you're at, you might have to play that, musical chairs game and trying to figure out which ones make the most sense. You can find methylene blue cheaper. I just don't think it's the same quality. There's also so new bio, no, actually, because this is a prescribed compound, orally Progress Pharmacy also has my favorite like capsule, but for oral methylene blue, there's also a liposomal methylene blue that the folks at Hemalumin or ALD devices or ALD, I think it's medicine, they sell a liposomal methylene blue, which means you don't have to have near as much of it, a couple drops. So it's quite expensive for a little bottle, but it lasts for months. So I like those. And then again, we have drug crafters for PolyMVA and compound pharmacy.
College Farms.
College pharmacy. Where is college? Ohio?
Colorado Springs, Colorado.
I'm gonna get Ohio. Yeah, Colorado Springs for PolyMVA. I don't know. Any other questions? Anything you can think we left out? Yes. Al, tell everybody how to get in touch with you. He'll travel
Oh,
to your office. He'll like he holds your hand the whole way. And I'm not going to publish my longevity protocols because that's somewhat proprietary. At the same time, I'm happy to help put packages together and share our experiences with how this combines or what kind of outcomes we're getting with these combinations. So yeah, PolyMVA, methylene blue. I don't do NAD and IVs. I don't like it myself, so I don't do it. I think that some of these cofactors and instigators are way better than NAD IVs.
yeah.
I do like it as an IM. I do probably once a year go through a bottle of NAD as an IM. But I don't do those IVs. Myers, again, there's all sorts of concoctions of that, and then E-Boost, definitely one of our favorites. But Al, how do you want them to contact you or your office?
So just reach out to the office. The phone number is 619-401-0715. You can also visit polymva.store and get set up there. So if you don't have an account, need a doctor's training, it's all right there under the professionals link. And then for myself, you can reach me directly at al@polymva.com. So again, that's al@polymva.com. So yeah, feel free. Give me the good, give me the bad, give it all to me. This is how we learn. I love to chit chat, kick some tires, figure it out. And then we write it down, and then what Kim and I are hopefully putting together in the future will be the testing of these things so that we can better understand these mechanisms and when not to use it, because that then just empowers you to better help your clients and your patients. So that's what we're here for.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you enjoy your stay in Alaska. And it's supposed to be the best time of year there. I
Yes,
haven't
it
been
is.
yet, but they say it's the best time. You going fishing?
Yes, ma'am.
Um, yeah, Jason would be jealous. He
Mhm.
loves it there. He's been there a couple times.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Thank you for your time tonight. It's always a pleasure and an honor, truly, to have you come along with us and share
Amen.
your insights and come through as true, in the trenches providers, learning and growing on your patients and with your patients. We do have a network where I would prefer I've been handing out my phone number just like Al did the last 3 months, and it's getting out of hand, which I want to talk to you. I want to hear from you. I just feel so bad when I forget people and I can't get back to you, and even my email. So if you go to our website, ozonetraining.com, there is a training materials tab, and you can log in there to our online platform. It's $3. They make me charge something, so we charge $3.03. It's a monthly fee, but you can cancel any time. When you get in there, yes, there's all this training materials on ozone UV, but there is a place, kind of like a Facebook page or something like that, where you can post your question and get responses from the community. And I've been in there every single day answering questions, but it gives us a place to do that. And hopefully I get a little help with that too between all of you. So join that, and then we can continue to create this space to even continue conversating about poly MVA. So if you want to continue any of these questions, you're ready in a month or two, or what was Al's number, whatever, just get into that space and ask it there. And then we can also, that's where I will be sharing my outcomes and my protocols and things like that as well. So it minimizes the amount of missed calls and texts and emails I get. Plus, we can all come together to be smarter than any one of us individually. So, Again, ozonetraining.com, and go to the training materials tab and register there. It'll get you in. And again, all the ozone stuff is there, ozone UV. IV stuff, I haven't been able to recreate the insufflations and the ozonated saline and the ozonated glycerin and all this other stuff yet. But I can throw up some protocols for poly in there as well. All right, you guys, thanks so much. Take
Awesome.
care and
Thank
enjoy
you.
the rest of your week.
I appreciate y'all.
All
Thank you.
right.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.